Hey everyone, today's adventure by the river. Ed is stumbling, then a Hawk jet appears like in a superhero film, and federal agents pop out magically. The high-tech sonic weapon scared the horse right out of its saddle, and Eddie ended up taking a plunge into the water. Poor Venom got kicked out too and had to dive after Eddie. The federal agents quickly pinpointed the target and jumped into the water like aquatic ninjas with their fancy gear. They were swimming after Eddie, and Venom was right behind him like a shadow. He didn't dare get too close to Eddie, lest the Codex cause a scene. Agents swiftly encircled Eddie with high-tech gear. Panicked, Eddie pulled out an oxygen tube. The SWAT team was stubbornly chasing him downstream, engaging in an underwater wrestling match. Eddie snatched a gun and went full flashy. Unexpectedly, the gun fired. Eddie found himself in a bizarre scene with a female soldier. As he floated away to breathe, SWAT pulled him underwater again. The raging river was about to hit a waterfall, and Venom found himself caught in a fishing net, struggling like a little fish trying to escape. After gobbling a big fish, Venom leaped out and hopped onto a little frog. He cheekily snapped on a bug, just as Eddie was about to tumble over the waterfall. Venom had to choose between the Codex and Eddie's life and quickly picked Eddie. This move made the entity notice him immediately, and the agents rushed in with stun guns to zap Venom out. The entity seized the opportunity to show off its jumping skills. It leapt towards the waterfall, carefully observed and confirmed the Codex location, and then, without hesitation, with a splash, dove straight into the water. It opened its mouth wide to gobble up Venom, but Venom dodged like a pro. The agents, seeing the monster, instinctively fired their weapons, giving Eddie and Venom the perfect. But these agents were like appetizers for the entity. They quickly became breakfast and turned into a nice pool of ketchup. Seeing they'd lost the target, it decided to call it a day. Meanwhile, the guy on the plane could hardly believe it, so he video called the lab to get the scoop. The girl in the lab announced it was a new species, see totally no info, so she dashed to the lab. It seemed like Mulligan's symbiote was perfectly blended. The symbiote began wrapping around it so slowly, and the lab gal and her assistant watched in horror. It was crawling around the lab like a space octopus. It knew the goal was the Codex on Venom. If obtained, it would unleash a cosmic god. If Enha returns, all the symbiotes will be curtains. The only way to stop Enha is to make the Codex disappear. If the symbiote and its host survive, the Codex lives on. If one pops, the Codex vanishes too. If Eddie dies, Venom goes bye-bye. Eddie narrowly escapes, but he stumbles upon Martin's family, clueless that he's now military. Martin kindly handed Eddie some grub, but Venom snatched it away like an angry toddler. Martin said they were heading to Area 51. Martin dreamed of meeting aliens, unaware they were brushing elbows with them. Eddie learned he was heading to New York barefoot. Martin's daughter thought Eddie was a hitchhiking serial killer, and Eddie was feeling a mix of emotions. Seeing their happy family meant something to Eddie, and they shared lots of laughter and bonding. That night, they showed up in Vegas, and Martin left Eddie a tip and even gifted him a pair of shoes. Venom finally sees his dream Statue of Liberty, just her laugh is greeting. But with only $20 in his pocket, they couldn't even get a glimpse of New York, so Eddie decided to try his luck at the casino. Unfortunately, Eddie's outfit was a big no-no, and security promptly kicked him out. Venom saw this and knocked out the guard with a headbutt. Suddenly, a drunk guy relieving himself caught Venom's eye, and he gave him a good smack. Then he dragged the guy to a corner, scored a suit and dress shoes, ready to make his grand appearance as the hottest gambler of the year. Even though he had just $20, he strutted out with billionaire vibes, only to lose everything in less than 3 seconds. Furious, he wanted to wipe the gambling table clean, but then he spotted an old acquaintance, Mrs. Chen, hitting the jackpot. Old friends meet again. Mrs. Chen was being a total boss at the casino, raking in a truckload of cash. She booked a fancy suite on the hotel's top floor and invited Eddie for drinks. Meanwhile, the military locked onto Eddie's location, and the pilot decided to bring him back at all costs. The two drank heavily and danced in the room, exposing the Codex location by accident. The entity sensed the Codex had been exposed and jumped straight to the tower top. When it realized it was its long-lost Codex, it leaped off the top without a second thought. Venom panicked, letting go of his host, telling the Chen to stay calm. If the entity can't sense the Codex, it's just like a blind bat. The entity searched and came up empty, letting out an annoyed screech before retreating. Just then, a helicopter burst onto the scene with the SWAT team jumping down in a flash, quickly using sonic guns to separate Venom from Eddie. Eddie got injected with something, and Mrs. Chen wasn't having it either. Once faced with the gun, she dutifully raised her hands. Eddie thought of his new shoes before capture. The SWAT team took him to the plane. They triumphantly returned with their prize, but little did they know the entity had stealthily locked onto them, resembling a ghostly figure leaping onto the plane. Meanwhile, Martin's family arrived at the abandoned Area 51, still dreaming of finding aliens, peeping through the wire fence. Unknowingly, they had crept through a dog hole, utterly oblivious to the nearby cluster of aliens that were captivating their gaze with an overwhelming sight. Hey buddy, Eddie got captured from that crowd, woke up to find himself locked in a lab. Oops. He was so bummed because Venom was gone, then realized opposite him was none other than the dead Detective Mulligan. Mulligan's symbiote form was right before Eddie. He was surprised, but hey, it made sense. Mulligan wished Eddie to safeguard the Codex and mentioned other symbiotes were waiting in the facility. He hoped Eddie could save them to go to Beijing, but Eddie was skeptical, wanting to protect the Codex and stop the Cosmic God.